Jr.
was killed, the Secret Service agents normally walk directly beside the car on either side. We do not see any in this photograph, but usually 2 or 3 Secret Service agents will walk on either side of the car so that they are there to spot anyone who looks like a troublemaker.
We've got some video from YouTube. One of the things you say in your book, it made you want to write this book, was all the conspiracy theories, and you talked about the movie from Oliver Stone. This is a man named Vince Palamara. Do you know him?
I'm familiar with him. I don't know him.
He says that, I guess, we'll talk about this, that he sent you a 22-page letter.
I recall receiving a letter which I sent back to him. I didn't bother with it.
You didn't talk to him ever?
He called me and I said hello, but that was about it.
Yeah, Clint Hill is claiming that he returned my letter and he didn't bother with it. Okay? Lisa McCubbin, the co-author of Gerald Blaine's book, The Kennedy Detail, claimed on Facebook that he threw it in the garbage. Perhaps the biggest contradiction of all is Gerald Blaine was quoting from the letter to me when I spoke to the gentleman on June 10th, 2005. So we got 3 different stories. Clint Hill's claiming here that he returned it to me. He did not return it to me. I received his signed receipt that he received it. He did not return it. Lisa McCubbin is claiming that he threw it away without reading it. And the evidence that indicts them the most is Gerald Blaine quoted from the letter to me, again, on June 10th, 2005.
And over the years, have you both been called about this assassination on many occasions?
I've been called numerous times.
What's been your attitude? How have you approached people that...
For the most part, I've just said I have no comment. I just have nothing to say.
And why is that?
Well, most of it's from people who are writing conspiracy theory books that don't make any sense to me. So if they're not going to deal in fact, then I don't want anything to do with it.
And how about you? What have you been...
Same thing. I have never talked to an author of a book, and I just felt we have it on our commission books, worthy of trust and confidence. And I felt those were issues that you should never talk to anybody on the outside about. And it was, I had to weigh and evaluate when I wrote this book, because I felt I wasn't talking about the Secret Service. I wasn't talking about the Kennedy family, but I was talking about the agents that I worked with and the incidents that occurred. And those were my friends, so that's when I decided to write.
Gerald Blaine is claiming that he's never talked to an author of a book. Hello. What about the massive best-selling book, Death of a President by William Manchester? Yep, massive best-selling book. And there he is. Hey! He spoke to him in 1965. May 12th, 1965, to be exact. Even his buddy Clint Hill and many of his comrades spoke to William Manchester. Okay? Uh-oh. He's also mentioned in Manchester's book, One Brief Shining Moment. Oh no, oh no. He's also mentioned in Ultimate Sacrifice. Yep. Well, I guess these don't count as books, huh, Jerry?
Do you have to get permission to do this from the Secret Service?
No.
So this wasn't cleared by the Secret Service, this book?
No, but we had lunch today with the director of the Secret Service, who thanked us very much for our contribution.
Gerald Blaine is claiming that the book wasn't cleared by the Secret Service, and yet he had lunch with the director, him and Clint Hill. On Jerry Blaine's own blog, when he attended the Association of Former Agents of the United States Secret Service annual conference, of which he's a past president of the organization and the sole surviving founding member, he mentions that Clint Hill briefed the director during the summer about the accuracy and purpose of the book. And again, at this conference, Blaine and Hill and McCubbin once again briefed Director Mark Sullivan of the Secret Service about the book. That's about as close as you can get to clearing a book.
Here is this video. It's not very long. And this man's name is Vince Palamara. He's a citizen who has taken it on his own to become an expert. He's from Pennsylvania, and I don't know him. I've never talked to him. I've just seen it on the web. And he is, I believe he's a graduate of Duquesne University. So let's watch this, and I'll get your reaction to it.
Hi, this is Vince Palamara, the self-described Secret Service expert that Jerry Blaine accuses me of without naming me, okay? Back with my obsession about the Kennedy detail. I gotta read this. This is rich. Page 287. This is what Blaine's claiming Riley said. Riley turned to Jerry Blaine, and Jerry, since you were in the lead car, did you ever hear this over your radio as well? Yes, sir, I did. I heard exactly what Floyd just told you. The thing about this is the whole thing about the Ivy League charlatans thing. Jerry Blaine told me the Ivy League charlatans thing came from the guys. I can't remember who said it. Boy, his memory got real good 5 years later, because now he's claiming he heard it over the radio. Floyd Boring, okay? Just unbelievable. It's just amazing to me, you know? There never would have been a book if I didn't send a 22-page letter, okay, to Clint Hill that pissed him off so much that his very good friend Jerry Blaine came out with this book as a counter, okay? There's some nice things I recommend everybody to buy. I don't mind the censorship. This is my First Amendment rights, okay? It's got some nice pictures, some nice non-assassination things, and there's even some good assassination-related things in here. But it's very obvious. Other people picked up on it. That's why there's some really bad reviews on Amazon right now. Mine's the best of the bunch at 3 stars, too. It's very obvious. It's a thinly veiled attempt to rewrite history and to blame President Kennedy without trying to blame him for his own assassination.
First of all, his is not the best of the reviews. There are 7 with 5 stars, just in case for the record, that I saw today when I looked on Amazon. What's your reaction? Could you hear?
Well, he wrote an assessment of the book about the first time about 5 weeks before it was released. The second time on Amazon.com, he and 4 of his friends, or 4 of his aliases, put a statement on assessing the book, a 1, a 2, and a 3. My assessment of Mr. Palamara is that he called probably all of the agents, and what agent who answers a phone is going to answer a question, was President Kennedy easy to protect? Well, probably he was too easy to protect because he was assassinated. But the fact that the agents aren't going to tell him anything, and he alludes to the fact that when I wrote the book, most of these people were dead. Well, I worked with these people. I knew them like brothers, and I knew exactly what was going on. And I always respected Jim Rowley because he stood up to the issue and said, look, we can't say the president invited himself to be killed, so let's squash this. So that was the word throughout the Secret Service.
This is Rich. Gerald Blaine is saying, my assessment of Mr. Palamara is that he called probably all the agents, which is true. And what agent who answers the phone is going to answer a question, was President Kennedy easy to protect? You did, Mr. Blaine. February 7th, 2004 and June 10th, 2005 to be exact. And many of your colleagues echoed the same thing. That JFK was a very nice man, never interfered with the actions of the Secret Service, and did not order the agents off the limousine. Picking up where Blaine left off. Well, he probably was too easy to protect because he was assassinated. Jeez, that's really nice to know, Mr. Blaine. Again, a quote from Blaine here. But the fact that the agents aren't going to tell him anything, you told me a whole bunch of things in our 45-minute conversations, plural, times 2, on those dates I mentioned. And many of your colleagues told me much of value. And he alludes to the fact that when I wrote the book, most of these people were dead. Yes, it's very relevant. Again, back to Blaine. Well, I worked with these people. I knew them like brothers, and I knew exactly what was going on, and always respected Jim Rowley because he stood up to the issue and said, look, we can't say the president invited himself to be killed, so let's squash this. 47 years later in Blaine's book, as I've covered in my Citizens for Truth and Kennedy Assassination online reviews and my blogs and whatnot, he's claiming in his book that there was a morning of JFK's funeral meeting of the Secret Service that Chief Riley said, look, We know the president ordered us off the back of the car. We can't let the public know about this because then they'll think we're blaming the president for his own death. We got to cover this up. Ironically, by telling this sordid tale, that's exactly what the book achieves. It does blame Kennedy for his own death by revealing this meeting. I do not believe this meeting took place at all. I think it's a total fabrication. There is no evidence for it whatsoever. That's just my opinion, based on the fact that there's a lack of evidence. It's very slick, though, because there probably was a security meeting to discuss the upcoming walk to St. Matthew's Cathedral with Jacqueline Kennedy, Haile Selassie, Charles de Gaulle, and all the dignitaries. But the bottom line is, everyone he's mentioning that attended this alleged meeting are long dead. There's no corroboration. And furthermore, the agents that spoke to me or wrote to me provided substantive details that go against this alleged meeting. The advance agents supposedly were told. No, they weren't. Winston Lawson told me in a letter, a complete stranger. Why would he lie? Said, I don't know of any standing orders for the agents to be off the back of the car. It never came to my attention as such. It never came to his attention as such. According to Jerry Blaine's book, there was a meeting.
Mr. Palamara, there are a number of things that have happened, but he has no credibility. He's a self-described expert in his area, which I don't know what it is. He was born after the assassination, and he keeps creating solutions to the assassination until they're proven wrong. So he's...
Yeah, like your attorney sending me a certified letter asking me to take down a blog where you guys were alleging I was saying that I was a co-author of the book. I wasn't saying that at all. I even noted it came from Lisa McCubbin's blog. I was just advertising the book. But that was a shot across the bow, wasn't it, Mr. Blaine? To try to put a scare in me. Didn't work. The truth shall prevail. I know what you said. I know what all your friends said. I have letters of them. I have some of them on audio tape. It is what it is, to use the common vernacular. And a quote from your book, we say that I stabbed your brothers in the back with baseless accusations. Hey, don't kill the messenger for giving you bad news. These gentlemen, including yourself, told me what they told me to a complete stranger on the phone, and or they wrote it, put it in writing. I mean, the consensus is overwhelming. It's a landslide that JFK did not order the agents off the back of the car, nor did he interfere with the actions of the Secret Service. You were a private in the Secret Service. Jerry Bain was the Douglas MacArthur of the Secret Service, #1 agent. His #2 assistant, Floyd Boring, also said the same thing. Kennedy never ordered the agents off the back of the car. So that's where I stand on the matter. He also says that he has no credibility. Well, we'll be the judge of that, won't we? He says he is a self-described expert in this area, which I don't know what it is. Well, self-described people as diverse as Vince Bugliosi, the History Channel, the Assassination Record Review Board, and even ironically Brian Lamb have called me a Secret Service expert. I mean, it is what it is. He was born after the assassination. Okay, and so was your co-author, Lisa McCubbin. And your point is?
He alleges that because he sent me a letter, 22 pages in length apparently, and that I discussed that with Jerry. I forgot that I ever got a 22-page letter from this particular individual until I heard him say it on TV. And I never discussed it with Jerry or anybody else because it wasn't important to me. And insofar as him being an expert, I don't know where the expert part came from. I spent a long time in the Secret Service in protection, and I'm not an expert, but apparently he became an expert somewhere up in Pennsylvania. I don't know where.
Okay, Mr. Hill, here we go again. You say, he, meaning myself, alleges because he sent me a letter 22 pages in length, apparently. Mr. Hill. Here's your signed receipt, okay? Here it is, June 2005. Yep, you received the letter all right. Another reason why I know you received the letter is when I phoned you a couple days later, you were irate as soon as you found out it was me calling you. And I asked you about the letter. And you said, about what? I said, well, sir, can you tell me what you thought of it or whatnot? And you said, you know what? I don't have any interest in talking to you. Okay. And what is the smoking gun, pardon the pun to this, is a couple days later, I talked to Jerry Blaine, and out of nowhere he mentions the deep friendship he had with you, the fact he just attended your son's wedding, and you guys knew each other since the late 50s when you served in the Denver field office. But the clincher was, out of nowhere, Mr. Blaine goes, hey, don't be too hard on Emory Roberts. He was a double, even a triple checker. He probably took Jack Brady's life into consideration. That was directly from my letter. So again, when Lisa McCubbin said, you threw the letter in the garbage without reading it, and you're saying here that you returned the letter to me and you never read it. Okay, the letter was not returned, and here's the signed receipt you received it, and your angry response to my phone call says it all. And the clincher is when Jerry Blaine quoted from the letter, "Party's over." That's exactly when Jerry Blaine started to write this book. Okay, and I was mentioned before about a shot across the bow. Yep, here it is from Jerry Blaine's attorney a little over a year ago. Hey! I am the attorney for Gerald S. Blaine. On November 21st, 2009, you copied the blog announcement by Lisa McCubbin, who is working with Jerry on his book, The Kennedy Detail, and republished it, stating, a collaboration between former JFK Secret Service agent Gerald S. Blaine and myself, thus making it appear that you, rather than Lisa McCubbin, are collaborating with Jerry on the book. Although the constitutional right of freedom of speech gives substantial freedom, it does not allow for misrepresentation, such as you have done. Therefore, I'm asking you that you immediately remove this erroneous information, and further, that you correct this erroneous information, stating that you are not and will not be connected to the book. I wrote back to them, I took down the blog, but I just amped everything up. This is ridiculous. And I won't be connected to the book. Hey, you guys are just talking about me on C-SPAN. I'm in a review from the Vancouver Sun about the book, but more importantly, I'm on pages 359 and 360 of your book. Yeah, I'm not connected to the book, huh? If you refuse to do this, I have been advised to consider action against you to obtain a court order directing you to cease and desist your wrongful activities. Oh, brother, for a blog. Jeez. In addition, Jerry and Lisa have rights as authors and copyright holders, which are valuable. Your activities will adversely affect these rights and cause them significant financial harm. Your book's a New York Times bestseller, Simon & Schuster, $28 a pop, not including shipping and handling and tax and so forth. You guys have made a killing on the book. I think the coast is clear now. I think we can worry about the significant financial harm of my information. If that occurs, they will take appropriate action against you to recover their losses. The truth hurts, doesn't it? Darn, if only all you guys didn't tell me that JFK was a very nice man, never interfered with their actions at all, and didn't order you guys off the back of the car. Yeah, Mr. Blaine, jeez. When I asked you about the Ivy League charlatan remark, where it came from, you told me on June 10th, it came from the guys. I can't remember who said it. I can't remember. Glad to hear your memory got real better, a lot better 5 years later, because now you're saying you heard it loud and clear on your walkie-talkie. Mr. Blaine, it's very obvious your book and the documentary are a reaction to my research. Other people have noticed it too. And specifically my letter to Clint Hill, the one he signed for. Because it looks pretty bad, doesn't it? It looks pretty bad. Yep. All these gentlemen, including yourself, are telling me that Kennedy never ordered them off the car. Why weren't they there? And this thing about the freeway, they were going too fast, that's bunk. Because there's many trips where the agents were on the back of the car at very fast speeds. No, won't wash.
Another one of these videos from YouTube, and this is from somebody, there's no name on it, The Truth Will Out. And I run it again so that you all can deal with what the accusations are. Let's run this, and it's about a minute and 29. You can watch it on these monitors here and comment on it.
Watch the left side of your screen. The arrow points to Agent in Charge, Emory Roberts, as he stands in the Secret Service follow-up car and motions with his hand. What he is doing is calling away the president's two most important bodyguards, the bodyguards whose job was to protect the president's back by riding on the bumper of the limousine throughout the motorcade. Watch again as he stands and orders the agents running at the rear of the president's car away. Watch the confusion inside the follow-up car that results. watch the right side of your screen, the arrow points to one of two agents whose job was to hop aboard the bumper and act as human shields. He's obviously perplexed. Watch as he shrugs his shoulders 3 times in dismay, each shrug more dramatic than the last. As you watch this scene for the final time, ask yourself, is this the kind of conduct you would expect from an agency that routinely sends an advance team to a city a month or more prior to the president's arrival in order to make preparations?
Mr. Hill.
Yes. I'd be glad to comment on that. I was the agent on the left rear outside, running alongside the car. The agent on the right rear, working the car, the right rear at that time, is an agent named Don Lawton. Don Lawton's assignment that day was not to ride in the follow-up car. His assignment was to remain at Love Field and handle our return, secure the airport for us when we came back. We were going to fly on to Austin, Texas. And what he was doing was, when he came back off the car, he was saying, okay, you guys, I'm going to lunch. Have a good trip. I talked to him within the last month, and he reiterated to me the same thing again. That's exactly what he was doing. Just making a gesture to us in the follow-up car. See ya. I'm going to lunch. Have a good trip.
Very disappointed. C-SPAN chose to use a very poor copy of the Love Field footage. This thing about the identification of the agent, whether it was Henry Ribga or Don Lawton, the point is moot. The bottom line is the agent was recalled from the car, from the area of the car, by Emery Roberts. And this thing about supposedly the agent said, "Yep, I'm going to go have lunch. It's up to you guys now." No one finds that credible. So that's where I stand on that.
The Zapruder film, when the Zapruder film is run at normal speed, another theme that Palamara throws out is that Bill Greer stopped the car. When it's run at its normal speed, you'll notice the car absolutely does not stop at all. This happened in less than 6 seconds after the president was hit in the throat and moving along. Then all of a sudden, everybody broke down the Zapruder film to frame by frame, slowed it down, and they created a myth to almost every frame of what was going on. And you'll notice, too, that when Mrs. Kennedy comes over after the first shot, she is directly in front of the president's face. And people have accused Bill Greer of pulling a gun out and shooting the president. He'd have had to shoot through the Conleys, and he'd have had to shoot Mrs. Kennedy. And the same thing holds for anybody on the grassy knoll. Had they fired, they'd have probably injured Mrs. Kennedy in it, too. These are the myths that come about. People create a myth or a theory, but they forget all the other facts that are going on.
Okay, Jerry Blaine saying, when the Zapruder film was running normal speed, another theme that Palamara throws out is that Bill Greer stopped the car. When it's running normal speed, you will notice the car absolutely does not stop at all. Well, a couple things I have to say about that. Close to 60 witnesses, including 7 Secret Service agents and Jacqueline Kennedy, said the car either slowed down or stopped. Don't kill the messenger for giving the bad news. All these men and women said what they said, wrote what they wrote. Okay, they were all eyewitnesses. They were there, Jerry. You weren't. You were in Austin, okay? They said the car slowed down and stopped, or just slowed down. Not that they all said it stopped. And as far as it not showing in the Zapruder film, well, Louis Alvarez and other people studied the film, and actually you could see the car slow down. And the major issue is a lot of people think the Zapruder film was tampered with. I don't mean the crazy theories where it was a total cartoon nonsense like that, but frames were removed. All those witnesses, and now the Zapruder film doesn't show a dramatic slowdown like all those witnesses claimed there were. No one's buying it. Who had access to the Zapruder film? Who owned it at first? The Secret Service. Says it all. In this comment you make, this happened in less than six seconds after the president was hit in the throat and moving along. Oh, the president was hit in the throat, huh? In the throat. From the front? What's the deal with that? You know what it is? I don't know. You guys just can't get your story straight. You can't get your facts straight. At least if you guys are going to counter someone on the other side like me, be well prepared. That's embarrassing. Well, good luck making your money off the man that you were sworn to protect. Have a nice day.
The most painful theories point fingers at the agents themselves.
I read where Pontius was part of it because he disappeared after Houston. A conspiracy for the agents to shoot the president. I mean, this is off the wall.
One of the agents shot him, and all the crap. Everybody's having a field day.
One of the conspiracy theories is that the agents left the president's car unguarded just before the shots were fired.
The motorcade had finished the crowd portion of the route and was about to hit the Stebbins Freeway, therefore going freeway speed. No agents were on the back of the car and would not ever be on the back of the car in those conditions.
This thing about the freeway, they were going too fast, that's bunk, because there's many trips where the agents were on the back of the car at very fast speeds.
There are so many stories out there that's strictly theory. People claim that they're experts. They have no basis to make that claim. I was a special agent in charge of vice president protection, special agent in charge of presidential protection, and assistant director of protective forces for the United States Secret Service. I'm not an expert, but apparently some of these people out there who write these books and concoct these theories are experts.
People as diverse as Vince Bugliosi, the History Channel, the Assassination Record Review Board, and even ironically Brian Lamb have called me a Secret Service expert. I mean, it is what it is.
The president's friend, Dave Powers, now director of the Kennedy Library in Boston, remembers talking to a grief-stricken Bill Greer, the Secret Service agent who drove Kennedy's car. What if they'd sped out of Dealey Plaza after the first shots, but before the fatal one?
I found it always, and so did he, you know, but Bill, all those agents were very close to us, and that they felt so bad.
If the driver of the president's car had stepped on the gas after the first two shots,
yes, the president would be alive today, and he'd be 71 years old, and he'd be the director here.
This is an amazing letter from Dave Powers, arguably JFK's best friend for years and the former curator of the JFK Library. September 10th, 1993. Okay. Also, unless they were running along beside the limo, the Secret Service rode in a car behind the president. So no, they never had to be told to get off the limo. Also, unless they were running along beside the limo, the Secret Service rode in a car behind the president. So no, they never had to be told to get off the limo. That destroys the Kennedy detail right there. And the whole notion of the O'Donnell Powers staff notion too.
The president grabbed his neck, and then by that time there was two falling shots, just like a pow, pow.
I find it interestingly enough that there's no truth to this thing about supposedly Kennedy ordered the agents off the back of the limousine. No, he had nothing to do with that. I figured that, because you know what? William Manchester makes the claim that Floyd Boring was ordered by Kennedy, and I'm quoting what it says in the book, says, keep those Ivy League Charlatans off the back of my car. That is false. Yes, I found that out, and I talked to William Manchester, who lives in Connecticut, about that. He got real defensive with me. He said, all those notes are under seal, and I'm not allowing anyone, especially yourself, to look at these rules. Who was this you were talking to? William Manchester. Oh, okay, I talked to William Manchester. He called me on the book. Yeah, that book is filled with things. That is, for the record of history, that is false. What confirmation has never been, in my history, any more rapport with the President of the United States, other than possibly during his Yeah, that's another one they said. Yeah, a fuel just like John F. Kennedy. Yeah, they said the only thing it caused, I don't really have too much faith in that. No, that's bad. I don't believe me. I'm not just putting any stock into it. Just any death read, you can't put a hell of much thought. I'll find that out. I tell you what, Sam, it's getting to that point. This is true. Yeah, and I tell you what, I get people that argue with me about this. Oh, come on, Kennedy was one of the most tough to protect presidents. He always ordered the men off the back of the limo, and now I'm finding out that's not true. You know, because they say they make a big play about supposedly Ford. Kennedy was one of the easiest ones to ever protect, and this is why most, I would say 99% of the agents, and I even like to go 100, but I like to leave leeway like this. You like me, leave room for him to hire to go. Right. He was one of the best presidents ever to control. Okay. Trust everyone.
Yeah. Why weren't Secret Service on the bumper that day? They were removed. You can go on the internet.
That's not what he told me.
They were removed from the bumper.
That's
and
not
the
what
Secret Service guy turns to his boss
Jesse, here's
and
my
goes,
point.
"What?"
Jesse, here's my point.
And they took him off the bumper. Why did they change the way that, for Dallas only, the way the motorcycles were lined up? They put 4 of them way in front and the others all behind. They didn't go in the standard wedge, which was used in the 2 previous days before. But in Dallas, that changed. They got him out of the way to give a clear shooting lane.
And their families waiting for the first couple that afternoon. There was the presidential limousine that 24 hours later would become a hearse.
This is the car in which President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. It's important to preserve this presidential limousine because history happened in this back seat. This limo was equipped with 2 different removable tops. One was a solid black steel, and the other was transparent plastic. And these different rooms were put together in separate sections, so you could put them on the car if you needed to protect the president from inclement weather.
The SS-100X always had a Secret Service driver and then a Secret Service agent in the passenger seat, in the front seat. The car itself had handholds on the trunk for the agents like myself to grab onto, to hold onto if we were on the rear of the car, and platforms built into the side of the car and the rear of the car, so that we could stand there in parade situations if necessary. There's always been some allegations about why the agents weren't up on the rear of the car in Dallas. Well, that was simply because the president didn't want them there. And so when we got to Texas, when it was not really necessary, we stayed off the back of the car.
Agent Clint Hill, with all due respect, is fibbing. That's a lie. Those 2 prior films they showed earlier in that clip prove it right there. The first clip that was greatly slowed down was from Bogota, Colombia. That's agents Bob Lilly and Roy Kellerman riding on the back of the car. Bob Lilly told me that President Kennedy never ordered the agents off the car ever, and that motorcade was reaching speeds of over 50 miles an hour at some points. The bubble top was on the whole time. It was a bright, sunshiny day, no rain. The other clip they did permit to run at normal speed. You can see how fast they were going. Also had the bubble top. Also no rain. See Chapter 1 of my book, Survivor's Guilt, the Secret Service and the Failure to Protect the President. Protect President Kennedy, I should say. The bottom line is, Clint Hill's fibbing, his shifty eyes and his nervous demeanor say it all. Allegations, those allegations came from me. Thank you.
Well, he can tell you what he wants done, and he can tell you certain things, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. And what we used to do was always agree with the president, and then we do what we thought was best anyway.
This, sir, is he quotes you in the book, but you're not interviewed in the book in the back section. Oh, yeah. He says that supposedly President Kennedy told you, I'm quoting, keep those Ivy League charlatans off the back of the car. That doesn't sound like, okay. Boy, I tell you, this is amazing. I didn't think so either, because he was gracious enough to indicate all his interviews at the back section of the book, but your name wasn't there. Something, how did he get a direct quote from a gentleman he never spoke to? I never told him that. Yeah. Hey, repeated where President Kennedy told the agents, I guess yourself and other people, get these men off my limousine, don't do this. That's not true. Okay. That's true. Very nice man. Yeah. Never interfered with us at all.
This is the lead advanced agent for Dallas, Winston Lawson. Keep in mind, the lead advanced agent for Dallas, Winston Lawson. This is an amazing letter he wrote me in January 12th, 2004. I do not know of any standing orders for the agents to stay off the back of the car. After all, foothold and handholds were built into that particular vehicle. I am sure it would have been on a case-by-case basis depending on the event, intelligence, threats, etc. Keep in mind, ostensibly, officially, allegedly, there were no threats found in Dallas. Jerry Bain, a special agent in charge of the White House detail, as it was known then, Presidential Protective Division currently, would have been privy to that type of info more than I. See my other video where Bain adamantly denies that President Kennedy ever ordered the agents off the car. However, it never came to my attention as such. I am certain that agents were on the back on certain occasions. Again, I do not know of any standing orders for the agents to stay off the back of the car. However, it never came to my attention as such. This totally debunks the Kennedy detail.
Out there. So she was pushed back into the seat by Clint Hill, who Secret Service agent, who notwithstanding carousing the night before until all hours of the morning, left the running board of the follow-up car, raced ahead, jumped on the car, pushed her into the back seat.
He has a successful trip there and back. And that's what they do on a day-to-day basis. They shouldn't be blamed for something that 9 or whatever the number is, other people did, which was really wrong, irresponsible, extremely poor judgment. Stupid is a better word for it all, and that's what they were.
Who's James Rowley?
Here's the fateful Tampa motorcade of November 18th, 1963. This is Congressman Sam Gibbons. There's JFK, Senator Smathers, Agent Don Lawton, Agent Chuck Zaboral, Agent Floyd Boring, Agent Bill Greer. Let's focus on Congressman Gibbons. What did Congressman Gibbons have to say about the whole notion of JFK allegedly ordering the agents off the car in Tampa? Here's what he told me in this letter dated January 15th, 2004, years before the Kennedy detail saw the light of day. I rode with Kennedy every time he rode. I heard no such order. As I remember it, the agents rode on the rear bumper all the way. Kennedy was very happy during his visit to Tampa. Sam Gibbons.
With this young blood, I guess it was,
He'll still around somewhere.
yeah, so he was on 60 Minutes about 20 years ago, but they showed an update last year. Him and his wife visited Dealey Plaza, and he finally got over, I don't know why he ever felt guilty about it in the first place. I guess
Everyone felt that. The job to protect the president, that's all. Everyone felt that.
yeah, that's true. I can see it. Well, you know what, I mean, in that short span of time, that would have been tough to have done anything, you know what I mean?
Well, I know that, but you still have regrets, remorse, whatever. Who knows if they left guys on the back of the car or something. You never know. You second guess. You can hindsight yourself to death.
You know what I mean?
Well, I know that, but you still have regrets, remorse, whatever. Who knows if they left guys on the back of
had me as a person he talked to, and I never talked with him. He had Floyd Boring as a person he talked to, and Floyd didn't talk to him. So, you know, I don't know where a lot of the information came from, but he had a lot of references on it. But I thought the book was right on the mark. He knew about the stop in Tampa and the president's request, and
But you never sat with him.
no, I don't know how he got a hold of that. And Floyd, he gave me a very full report for the book, and Floyd said he didn't talk with him. He doesn't know where the information came from.
Blaine is partly correct. Floyd Boring did not. He was not interviewed by William Manchester, as the source notes reveal, and Floyd Boring was adamant to me he was never interviewed by Manchester, and Floyd Boring adamantly denied what was attributed to him in the book was even true. Floyd Boring said that was not true. President Kennedy never ordered the agents off the car. That whole Ivy League charlatans comment was bullshit. And what other bullshit is, Gerald Blaine was interviewed for this book. He's lying now. Gerald S. Blaine was interviewed. He admitted to me in 2005 he was interviewed for the book. I wonder why he's denying it now. Could it be because he is the originator of the JFK ordered us off the back of the car Ivy League charlatans bullshit? Could be.
Two crucial decisions are made that affect the president's security. It had been raining in Texas, and they chose to remove the bubble from the president's car. Previous to that, they had the bubble on the car, but it was a very bright, sunny day.
In all due respect to the Newmans, good people who believe shots came from the front, directly behind them on the grassy knoll. The they Bill Newman is referring to, they were the Secret Service. This was a Secret Service decision, as Agent Sam Kinney told me.
The president is also keen to give the crowds the best view possible, so asks the Secret Service agents not to stand on the back of the car.
Basically, he didn't want to look like he was overprotected. So we had a shortage of agents, and then he emphasized that he didn't want agents on the back of the car.
This is total bull. Gerald Blaine spotting this total mythology, this total false crap. There's no other way to put it. Not only did Gerald Blaine told me twice in 2004 and 2005 that President Kennedy never interfered with their actions at all, many of his colleagues, including several way above him in rank, the number 1 agent, Gerald Bain, the number 2 agent, Floyd Boring, one of the 3 shift leaders, Art Godfrey, dozens of others, and several important White House aides, including Dave Powers, all told me that President Kennedy did not order the agents off the back of the car. Dave Powers, arguably JFK's best friend since 1946, wrote to me in a letter saying that the president never had to order the agents off the car. The list goes on and on. See my first book, Survivor's Guilt, and also see my third book, The Not So Secret Service. It's a shame that Gerald Blaine is still spreading these lies.
I think I'm going to have them right on the back end of the president's car, because we just don't have the manpower to do anything else but that. All of a sudden I hear over the radio, the president wants the Ivy League charlatans to fall back to the follow-up car.
Gerald Blaine told Vince Palamara that he heard this remark from the guys, not over his radio. He told Vince Palamara that President Kennedy never interfered with their actions at all. Floyd Boring, the agent you see in the passenger seat of the limousine next to the driver Bill Greer, that's Floyd Boring, he was Assistant Special Agent in charge. He told Vince Palamara that this was not true. JFK was a very nice man, never interfered with their actions at all. He never ordered them off the back of the car. I specifically asked him about the Ivy League charlatans remark. It's in William Manchester's book. Floyd Boring adamantly denied this to me twice. He also sent me a letter saying that President Kennedy was very cooperative. The same thing he told the JFK library in 1976. Don Lawton, the agent you're seeing about to get on the back of the car there, told me that, who knows, you can hindsight yourself to death. If they would have left guys in the back of the car, Special Agent in Charge Jerry Bain and a slew of other agents told me that President Kennedy never ordered the agents off the back of the car. Gerald Blaine, author of the Kennedy Detail, told me the same thing until he realized, uh-oh, we got to cover our behinds.
And he politely told everybody, we're starting the campaign now, and the people are my asset. Said I couldn't get elected dog catcher.
Blaine took that from Floyd Boring's JFK Library oral history in a different context that was not related to the agents being on the back of the car, which is totally untrue. See the gentleman next to JFK there? That is Congressman Sam Gibbons. He told me the agents were on the back of the car the entire time. He heard no presidential order to remove the agents from the back of the car. President Kennedy had back braces and a very bad back. He couldn't have turned around to see the agents. He wouldn't have cared one way or the other. And the agents were actually back far enough, they weren't an issue anyway.
If I didn't get out and greet the public, we all of a sudden understood, but it left a firm command to stay off the back of the car.
That left a firm command to stay off the back of the car? Bull. Again, Gerald Blaine in 2004 told me that President Kennedy never interfered with their actions. In 2005, when I told him, where did the Ivy League charlatans comment come from? He said, came from the guys. I can't remember who told me. I can't remember. Now he's saying he heard loud and clear over his walkie-talkie. Yet Floyd Boring told me it's not true. Gerald Blaine was interviewed by William Manchester, something he is now denying. I feel strongly that Gerald Blaine is the source. It's in Manchester's book of this Ivy League charlatans mythology. President Kennedy never ordered the agents off the back of the car.
Staff, agents who usually surround the limousine were pulled away so people could see the president better. One reacted by throwing up his hands in disgust. 3 times he protested, what would prove to be a fatal error. Kennedy was killed by the 3rd shot from a sniper rifle, well after agents, if they had been nearby. Agents who usually surround the limousine were pulled away so people could see the president better. One reacted by throwing up his hands in disgust. 3 times he protested, what would prove to be a fatal error. Kennedy was killed by the 3rd shot from a sniper rifle, well after agents, if they had been nearby.
It's a picture of Agent John Marshall and another agent while he was protecting FDR. Long-serving agent in the White House detail, and later, during Kennedy's time in the Miami field office. This was taken from Phil Lanson's book, The Secret Service. This is the House Select Committee interview, February 2nd, 1978, interview of John Marshall. There's some interesting things in here. After the President's Orange Bowl speech to the Bay of Pigs Brigade, and before the next day on which the Orange Bowl football game was played, a stick of dynamite was discovered on the motorcade route by the Miami Police Department at the stadium. Even though President Kennedy planned to attend and did attend the Orange Bowl game, and even though Presidential Appointment Secretary Kennedy knew about the dynamite, the President proceeded to the bowl along the same route as that used on the day before. Yeah, that's very interesting. Look at this, though. This is a fantastic book written by Helen O'Donnell called A Common Good, The Friendship of Robert F. Kennedy and Kenneth P. O'Donnell. There's Kenny O'Donnell. There's Helen O'Donnell, his daughter. This book, much of the material in this book has been gathered from the private tapes of my father, Kenneth P. O'Donnell. Okay, so she has her vivid memory in the private audio tapes of my father, Kenneth P. O'Donnell. When I wrote to her, really sweet lady, "Dear Vince, thank you for your friend requesting your note, blah, 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 blah. Suffice to say that you are correct. JFK did not order anybody off the car. He never interfered with my dad's direction on the Secret Service, and this is much backed up my dad's tapes. JFK did not order anybody off the car. He never interfered with my dad's direction on the Secret Service, and that is much backed up in my dad's tapes. I think and know from the tapes, Dallas always haunted him," meaning O'Donnell, "because of the might-have-beens. But they involved the motorcade route. He constantly questioned his own decision to take the motorcade in that direction, but he never blamed the Secret Service. The important thing, JFK did not order anybody off the car. This is much backed up in my dad's tapes." Kenny O'Donnell, you've been vindicated. The Kennedy Detail, that book by Gerald Blaine, the Kennedy Detail has been thoroughly debunked.
Jerry and I talked about this a lot because I read something or read reports and I say, Jerry, this contradicts what you're telling me or what Clint is telling me. And I came to realize that these were the guys that were there and their memories are so vivid and so clear.
April 1974.
Where were you on the day of the assassination of John Kennedy?
I was standing out in front of the sheriff's office, which at that time was at 505 Main Street. They've moved it since then, but it was at 505 Main Street, directly in front of the front door.
Was the motorcade passing that area at that time?
No, we had to wait about 15 minutes before the motorcade arrived, but the sheriff had sent us out there that early to wait.
Were you merely a spectator, or were you on duty?
Well, no, I was on duty, but a couple hours before Kennedy was to arrive, the sheriff called us in, what I call the street people, the plainclothesmen, the detectives, and he instructed us that we were to stand out in front and in no way take part in the security of that motorcade, that we were merely spectators and nothing more.
Did that seem unusual to you?
It did to me at the time because there were so many people around and so few Dallas police officers. This is one of the first things I noticed was the lack of Dallas police officers. Try to keep the people back.
Adlai Stevenson, who had been assaulted in Dallas the previous month, and others, including Congressman Henry Gonzalez from San Antonio, Texas, had warned President Kennedy not to travel through Dallas. But the Secret Service told the president that he had nothing to worry about, since the greatest security in the history of the country for an American president, comprised of the coordination of all the local and federal police, had been set up for Dallas. Yet Roger Craig, an intelligent, instinctive police officer, and many other police officers were specifically told not to take part in the security that day.
Left into history that day, but he could not get there fast enough.
When I got up on the car, Mrs. Kennedy then came up on the trunk. I got a hold of her and put her in the back seat. When I did that, he fell into her lap, but the right side of his face was up. I could see his eyes were fixed. I could see into the skull. There was a hole in his skull. And you could see that part of the brain was gone. It wasn't even there. So I just turned and gave a thumbs down to the follow-up car crew because I thought it was a fatal wound. He was dead.
Doctors and nurses try frantically to save her 46-year-old husband's life in Trauma Room 1.
He really didn't do an awful lot. I was convinced in my own mind that he wasn't going to make it. Right here. It was all gone.
Agent Lawson knows that doctors' attempts are futile.
He could do. This part of his head right here was all gone.
Doctors and nurses try frantically to save her 46-year-old husband's life in Trauma Room 1.
He really didn't do an awful lot. There was an awful lot they could do. This part of his head right here was all gone. He really didn't do an awful lot. There was an awful lot they could do. This part of his head right here was all gone. He really didn't do an awful lot. There was an awful lot they could do. This part of his head right here.
Out there. So she was pushed back into the seat by Clint Hill, who Secret Service agent, who notwithstanding carousing the night before until all hours of the morning, left the running board of the follow-up car, raced ahead, jumped on the car, pushed her into the back seat.
Did you keep notes?
I did, but I destroyed them a few years ago, which really made it more difficult.
Why did you destroy them?
I promised that I would never write a book. I vowed that I would never do so, never contribute to a book, never talk to anybody about it. And so, just to kind of make sure I would never get myself involved, I burned everything. There were a few mementos I kept, but for the most part I burned all my notes. And now, when the opportunity presented itself and I decided to do it, I had to go back and talk to other agents who I worked with who still have some notes, and to check everything through newspaper archives for dates and times and places to make sure I was accurate. And so it was very tedious to go through this and write the book.
Do you remember the year you burned your notes?
It's 2012. It was after maybe 2005, something like that.
So what?
The results are known.
As an aside, by the way, the fellow we talked about in the last interview, Vince Palamara,
yeah.
You seen his letter to the about your book?
I've not read it, no.
I'm sure you probably know that he said that Mrs. Kennedy and Me is highly recommended to everyone for its honesty and rich body of truth. He actually fully endorsed your book, even though he's been critical of...
Well, I'll accept his
endorsement. Are you worried that he's being...
Well, maybe he has some secret agenda, I don't know, but I accept his praise. Thank you.
In your book, you say that you and Mrs. Kennedy never talked about the assassination.
These are photographs of motorcades, President Kennedy, 1961 through 1963. Former Secret Service agent Gerald Blaine, the author of the Kennedy Detail, would have you believe that the agents obscured the view of President Kennedy. This is total bunk, total bull. Here are the agents on the back of the car, June 1963. Here's Kennedy. Again, here's the agents, here's Kennedy. Look at all this room here. Look at all the people cheering on Kennedy. Are these agents obscuring the view of President Kennedy? I mean, you can't see him because the agent's on the back of the car? Totally ridiculous, totally fraudulent. The agent should have been there. This agent, Sam Sullivan, told me President Kennedy did not order the agents off the back of the car. Special Agent in Charge Gerald Bain, B-E-H-N, said, I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about having agents on the car. But he said that Kennedy never ordered them off the car. I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about not having agents on the car. If you see the newsreels, you'll see agents on there. This is 4 days before Dallas. Tampa. Again, 2 agents on the back of the car. Don Lawton and Charles Zaboral. There's Kennedy. Look at the room. Look at all the people looking at Kennedy. Look at Kennedy looking at him and smiling. Floyd Boring told me that President Kennedy was a very nice man, never interfered with their actions at all. Totally denied the story in William Manchester's book, Death of a President, about that Ivy League charlatan's comment attributed to Boring. Boring said that was not true. He was not interviewed by William Manchester, which is also confirmed by William Manchester's notes. Lo and behold, who was interviewed by William Manchester? Gerald Blaine. I strongly suspect Gerald Blaine was the author of that fraudulent story about Ivy League charlatans. Gerald Blaine is now denying he was interviewed by Gerald Blaine, but Gerald Blaine was interviewed by William Manchester. Sorry about that. Gerald Blaine was interviewed by William Manchester. Manchester's source notes confirm that. But again, the central point is, look, here's the agents, here's Kennedy. Here's the agents, here's Kennedy. Nobody's obscuring anybody. Again, here are the agents on the back of the car. There's even the bubble top, nice motorcycle. No one's being obscured by the agent's presence on the back of the car. Again, Bob Lilly told me the agents were often on the back of the car at very fast speeds. In fact, this article goes into detail about that. The procession moved too fast. It says BS about supposedly oh, you know, they wouldn't have been on the car if the car was going fast, like entering the freeway. They reached speeds of 50 plus miles an hour. Again, bubble top. These are all different stops. There's Roy Kellerman, ironically, on the back of the car. But again, the distance between Kennedy. Do not believe Gerald Blaine. People could see Kennedy just fine with the agents on the back of the car.
He has a successful trip there and back. And that's what they do on a day-to-day basis. They shouldn't be blamed for something that 9 or whatever the number is, other people did, which was really wrong, irresponsible, extremely poor judgment. Stupid is a better word for it all, and that's what they were.
Who's James Rowley?
And their families waiting for the first couple that afternoon. There was the presidential limousine that 24 hours later would become a hearse.
This is the car in which President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. It's important to preserve this presidential limousine because history happened in this back seat. This limo was equipped with 2 different removable tops. One was a solid black steel, and the other was transparent plastic. And these different roofs were put together in separate sections, so you could put them on the car if you needed to protect the president from inclement weather.
The SS-100X always had a Secret Service driver and then a Secret Service agent in the passenger seat, in the front seat. The car itself had handholds on the trunk for the agents like myself to grab onto, to hold onto if we were on the rear of the car, and platforms built into the side of the car and the rear of the car, so that we could stand there in parade situations if necessary. There's always been some allegations about why the agents weren't up on the rear of the car in Dallas. Well, that was simply because the president didn't want them there. And so when we got to Texas, when it was not really necessary, we stayed off the back of the car.
Agent Clint Hill, with all due respect, is fibbing. That's a lie. Those 2 prior films they showed earlier in that clip prove it right there. The first clip that was greatly slowed down was from Bogota, Colombia. And that's agents Bob Lilly and Roy Kellerman riding on the back of the car. Bob Lilly told me that President Kennedy never ordered the agents out of the car ever, and that motorcade was reaching speeds of over 50 miles an hour at some points. The bubble top was on the whole time. It was a bright, sunshiny day, no rain. The other clip they did permit to run at normal speed, you could see how fast they were going, also had the bubble top, also no rain. See Chapter 1 of my book, Survivor's Guilt, the Secret Service and the Failure to Protect the President. Protect President Kennedy, I should say. The bottom line is, Clint Hill's fibbing, his shifty eyes and his nervous demeanor say it all. Allegations, those allegations came from me. Thank you.
The first night or so I was there, someone took me aside and said that it's a good idea to keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut, because you're going to see a lot of stuff that doesn't belong outside the agent's information.
The Secret Service saw another side of Camelot, the dark side.
It only happens at night. Prostitution, that's illegal. Procurement is illegal. And if you have a procurer with prostitutes paraded in front of you, then as a sworn law enforcement officer, you're asking yourself, well, what do they think of us?
We protected the president in many different ways. But the Honolulu episode made me angry. It didn't make me angry. We're talking about the President of the United States. And I'm not a holier-than-thou guy. But he just shouldn't be doing this in public.
We protected him readily with our lives if we had to. But there were times when he would go into private gatherings and private activities where I felt that he opened himself to danger, to hazard, and things that weren't very mildly not becoming the President of the United States, to say the least.
He was like a rough-cut diamond you just dug out of the dirt. If you cut it or strike it, you see one facet which makes you want to go out and fall under a car for him and love and admire him. And you see another facet that would make you not want to ever associate with him off the job in a bar or a restaurant or spend time, certainly not let him babysit your sister.
Agents report that the president often spent private time with young women on the White House staff. 2 of them were secretaries, known by the nicknames Fiddle and Faddle.
Fiddle and Faddle joined the Kennedy campaign in Los Angeles, and after he was elected, they were assigned to work in the White House. But it became apparent that they were there to be scooped up and taken into the pool at noon with JFK. And the term we heard, they would go skinny dipping with Jack. And they appeared to be the sole afternoon entertainment for the president. And occasionally one of the White House staff members would take 1 or 2 of them upstairs when the president was up there. But this never happened when Jacqueline Kennedy was in town or when she was in the White House.
One time, warning didn't come to the White House that Mrs. Kennedy was actually on her way, and just in the nick of time, the agent in charge was able to run into the pool and warn the president, and the door opened and people scattered, and as he ran out, he was holding a Bloody Mary in his hand, and I happened to be on the post there, and he said, "Here, take this." He didn't know what to do with it, and so I took it, and upstairs he went, and everybody parted, and everybody left, so that she didn't know. I never, in my real mind, figured that for the 2 years I was there, that she really didn't know what was going on. It would have been impossible, but strange situation. It was Camelot. You don't rock the boat.
I'm not sure how fully Jackie knew of the extent to which he was womanizing. She
Was to compromise a targeted official by exploiting a personal weakness. In the Kennedy White House, members of the Secret Service were concerned that the president's private behavior made him a potential target.
Many people came to the White House who did not know who they were. He had a tendency to surround himself with ladies sometimes that were a little worrisome. These women were of questionable character.
Most of the other Secret Service agents and myself were worried about the fact that the Russians or communists or any people like that could bring in a ringer, so to speak.
We didn't know if these women were carrying listening devices, if they had syringes that carried some type of poison, or if they had Pentax cameras that would photograph the president for blackmail.
Possibility of blackmail and things like that are astounding. Who knows? I never knew the name of one of the outsiders.
One night in Seattle, we took the president up to the Olympic Hotel to secure for the night, and as we were doing that, a high-ranking law enforcement official from King County had come out of the elevator with 2 prostitutes and was walking down toward the president's door. And a senior staff member came out of the president's suite, thanked him for bringing the girls up and took them into the suite. So one of the policemen, the lieutenant, asked me, he said, "Does this go on all the time?" And I didn't know what to say, and I said, "Well, we travel during the day, this only happens at night."
Prostitution, that's illegal. Procurement is illegal. And if you have a procurer with prostitutes paraded in front of you, then as a sworn law enforcement officer, you're asking yourself, well, what do they think of us?
You were on an elite assignment. It was the most elite assignment in the Secret Service. And you were there watching an elevator or a door because the president was inside with 2 hookers.
And this continued constantly. It was just not once every 6 months, not every New Year's Eve, but it was a regular thing. And I remember one time I was with the president in Honolulu. During that trip, he went to Battleship Arizona and a few other things. The president arrived at the residence about on time. I'd say within 10 minutes, a staff member arrived in a car escorting 2 ladies, and they marched in the house also. This was sort of the usual routine in many stops. And a colonel of the Marines turned to me and said, who were they? And I turned to him, I said, well, they're secretaries, and I assume there's some work the president wants done this evening. We protected the president in many different ways. But the Honolulu episode made me angry. It did make me angry. We're talking about the President of the United States. And I'm not a holier-than-thou guy, but he just shouldn't be doing this in public like this. There was no regard for who was there. The Marine colonel was there. He knew what, was going on. Other people were there. The Navy people were in the house. The cooks were in the house. He's the president. He's the boss. I didn't like it, but what you gonna do about it? Nothing.
To try to clear the agency's name through the release of records. Overall, I thought that the Central Intelligence Agency was very cooperative with us. They didn't appeal any of our decisions. The FBI had a wonderful set of carefully cataloged records. They fought us for a time on all of our releases. Eventually they gave up. Secret Service, on the other hand, was very difficult for us to deal with. Perhaps that was not surprising because November 22nd, 1963 was the worst day by far in the long history of the Secret Service. Everything was done poorly that day. This was a very dangerous situation. An open limousine. Secret Service, on the other hand, was very difficult for us to deal with. Perhaps that was not surprising because November 22nd, 1963 was the worst day by far in the long history of the Secret Service. Everything was done poorly that day. This was a very dangerous situation. An open limousine, crowds everywhere, buildings not checked, parts of a parade route where the vehicles had to slow to almost a stop to make that corner there, that sharp turn under the book depository building. Now all you have to do is look at the films from that day to see people like within 2-3 feet of the president as the limousine poked its way down the street. So the Secret Service was entirely revamped, and procedures and policies were changed entirely on the basis of what happened that day. There was no coordination with local law enforcement that there should have been. The FBI was following Oswald. I mean, obviously they knew he was working in the school book depository building. Was there any discussion ahead of time that this guy was clearly erratic? A little coordination here would have made all the difference in the world. The FBI and the CIA were listening to his conversations in the Cuban and Soviet embassies in Mexico City 6 or 7 weeks before the assassination. They knew what this guy was up to. He was erratic. Yet no one checked out his employment in the book depository building. In terms of after the fact, I mean, I think the Secret Service was most interested in getting, the president obviously to the hospital fast and then getting the body out of Dallas. As far as their motivations, obviously they knew they had failed in their job that day. They failed to protect the President of the United States. Did they cover up things after the fact? They probably covered up, not doing their job very well. During the review board's work in 1995, they did destroy records relating to threat assessments in Dallas before November 22nd, 1963. Well, we hauled them in right away to explain what was going on. No, it was inadvertent. Inadvertent, where you've got a law that requires you to present everything to us for our decision. and well, they blamed some low-level person. I mean, it was just, it was inexplicable.
And Judge Thunheim says the investigation into the assassination.
From his hometown of Duluth in Minnesota, one of those questioning critics of the official version of events is Professor James Fetzer.
The resurgence of interest in the death of JFK had repercussions when Congress passed the JFK Records Act in 1992 that created a 5-civilian-member board entrusted with the responsibility to review and declassify documents that were held by the CIA, the Secret Service, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and so forth. We know from its own report that it had some significant failures. For example, and the Secret Service, which deliberately destroyed motorcade records that would have revealed that the motorcade in Dallas was a travesty, a violation of at least 15 different Secret Service policies for presidential protection. This behavior on their part raises the most serious and disturbing questions about their complicity in the entire affair.
From the moment he arrived in Dallas, the president's protection was suspect, according to Vince Palamara, a Secret Service expert.
There was last-minute changes invoked by the Secret Service involving President Kennedy's security. Specifically, agents were told not to ride on or near the rear of the limousine. Now, these orders were funneled from the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the White House detail, who was the planner of the Texas trip, Floyd Boring, to one of his assistants, a shift leader by the name of Emory Roberts, who was in charge of the follow-up car. You can see an agent, Henry Ribka, doing his normal duty, jogging besides the limousine, when in the follow-up car, you can see Emory Roberts stand up and wave him back, and you can see a very perplexed Agent Ribka waving his arms in the air several times in seeming disgust. There was another last-minute change made at Love Field, invoked by the Secret Service. The Dallas Police Department motorcycle outriders were told not to be beside the car. It went from 4 to 6 down to a measly 2 riders on each side, and to add insult to injury, they were pushed further back in the motorcade by those agents not being by the car, by those motorcycle officers not being in the position. It opened up President Kennedy to a field of fire from in front and from the rear.
In the months before the trip to Texas, there had been a growing number of threats against the president's life.
Despite the increase in conspiratorial activity in the month of November 1963, in the apparent red alert the Secret Service appears to be under in response to this activity, the agency acts in the opposite fashion and actually reduces the security and acts like no threats on the president's life are occurring. Why?
Uniquely on that day in Dallas, the press, the camera crews, Kennedy's military aide, who would normally sit in the front of the president's car, and even his personal physician were all relegated to the rear of the motorcade by the Secret Service.
In a conventional motorcade, the president would be somewhere in the middle, surrounded by security and the press. In this case, the presidential limousine was set right out in front of every other limousine, which of course is the reason why the Secret Service destroyed the records of its own motorcades when they were asked for them by the Assassination Records Review Board.
The most suspicious behavior by shift leader Emory Roberts was to be at the time of the shooting in Dealey Plaza.
Tragically, he actually ordered the agents not to move during the heart of the shooting. Agent Sam Kinney, who drove the follow-up car, admitted as much to me and told me, quote, exactly right, end quote. And all these deficiencies begin and end with the Secret Service, because they were the prime movers. They were the ones who were directing the security arrangements from Washington up to and including in the heart of Dallas during security meetings. They were the ones that gave out assignments, vetoed or approved of security arrangements. So the buck stops with them.
At Parkland Hospital after the president's death, the media were reporting that the fatal shots had come from in front of the presidential.
Getting ready to wave at the president. So
you were down under the viaduct, so to speak, weren't you?
Well, we were halfway in between on the grass, triple underpass. We were at the curb when the incident happened. But the president's car was some 50 feet still yet.
In front of you?
In front of us coming towards us, and we heard the first shot, and the president, I don't know who was hit first, but the president jumped up in his seat and I thought it scared him. I thought it was a firecracker because he looked, you know, fear. And then as the car got directly in front of us, well, a gunshot apparently from behind us hit the president in the side of the temple.
Do you think the first gunshot came from behind you too?
I think it came from the same location. Apparently back up on the mall. I don't know what you call it.
For the benefit of nomenclature, all of you folks have gone out under the viaduct, and as you turn, going under the viaduct on the left-hand side, there's some grass. Do you think the shot came from up on top of the viaduct toward the president? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Not on the viaduct itself, but up on top of the hill, a little mound of ground there, the garden.
How far away would you say that is from where the president was? A couple of 300 yards, something like that?
Well,
shooting took place today. Dallas is off to your left. This is Main Street. This is the county courthouse and the jailhouse in this block here. This is the triple underpass that we have referred to. This is where President Kennedy, Johnson, and as I understand it now, a Secret Service man was shot at about, and Conley was shot at approximately 12:35 today. And from our eyewitness that you saw earlier, was shot from up in here. This is an overpass going over these streets. We call it our triple underpass because there's another one, was shot from here.